Hello and welcome to Frames TM, and today we'll talk about the 400 4.5. We should start with the usability of this lens. This lens is built for better usability. It's 400 millimeters. This is a great lens for wildlife and even for birding. It's a bit more difficult for birding than wildlife, but for large animals, this is a perfect lens. The 4.5 aperture f number is just right for it to shoot when the sun is falling, and it allows you decent shutter speed while shooting action or rapid movement. First of all, this is a very light lens. You can just walk all day with this lens. For a birding wildlife lens, this feels like a 70 to 200 and probably even lighter. What I don't like about this lens is this handle. I think it's too small to actually hold it securely. I would actually remove this and just keep in my pocket, because why should I carry this weight on my shoulder? So yes, after removing this handle, this feels even lighter, and I would just hold it like this, and this is just nice, very nice. You've got a autofocus manual focus switch here. You've got a focus limiter switch here, full range and infinity to 6 meters at the closest towards you, and then you have a memory button here which you can set to whatever you like to set to. I like where this particular ring exists. I can, if I want to quickly manual focus, I can always access this ring, and that's quite handy and usable. I recently did lens ranking for about 35 Nikon lenses, and I did not include this 400 4.5. I didn't include that there because at that point I hadn't used this lens, but now that I have used it, I think this lens deserves to be there in the second spot from the top. This is a beautiful lens if you look at the image quality and usability, and also then the price, and also the minimum aperture. The stabilization coupled to the Z8 is fantastic. Let me show you lots of footages here. It was not like my hand was not shaking. I was not being particularly careful when I was actually shooting and recording these videos. First of all, the autofocus on the Z8 with firmware 2.0 is absolutely stunning. Just finds a bird's eyes, and I think it's better in video than in photo, and I think even in photo it's just unbeatable right now.
Hey there, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, like the video if you like the content, and subscribe and help me reach 6,000 subscribers by the end of March.
400 4.5, this being a prime, the autofocus is absolutely swift and quick. One quick thing that I liked about this lens is actually the lens hood. The lens hood got this rubber tip, which is quite nice. Like, when really keep the lens on the ground or somewhere like this, and it's got a nice sort of rubber protective layer on top of the lens. And I wish more Nikon lenses actually came with this rubber tip, but they don't. I think that even the 100 to 400 actually does not come with this kind of rubber tip, and I wish those lenses, all of those lenses, came with this kind of tip. I really like it. Now, although this is such a compact and beautiful lens, it looks tiny, but it actually has a 93 millimeters filter size, which is a bit surprising. I think most people using lenses of this size will have 82 millimeters filter size, but then this is 95, which means you have to go for those larger filters. Now, there is one potential downside or limitation to the 400 4.5, and that's the fact that it is actually a 400 millimeters lens. Now, a 400 millimeters is I would say, the shorter end of telephoto lenses, super telephoto lenses, but this is good enough for most indoor sports photography, large animal wildlife, and you get to use higher shutter speeds as well and low ISO. But it is in some situations when you shoot birds and you don't get to go very close to them. In those situations, you may have to crop in post or actually shoot in the DX mode. So now that we understand that 400 millimeters can be a bit short in some situations, especially when you cannot get very close to the subject, we have to see how much you can crop in the images, in the raw files, and still get sharp images. Now, the one question that people might have is, how does it compare to the 600 6.3? I have not used the 600 6.3, but from the reviews and everything, what we know is that that's an absolutely super sharp lens. And that lens can compete with the 400 after cropping. That lens can compete with the 400 2.8, and also the 800 6.3 after cropping. We should be happy if we get a usable image out of this lens after cropping for about 50 to 100%. So let's see how this lens compares in cropping, and see what kind of resolution you get out of this lens.
100% crop is not a problem with this lens at all. You get all the resolution and the detail, and you see all of that in the image when you crop in by 100%. At this point, I'd like you to subscribe to the channel. I want to reach 6,000 subscribers by the end of March. If you're getting any value out of this content, then please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now coming back, I also cropped in by 200 to 300% in some of these images, and I saw enough detail in these images. But to be honest, I wouldn't like to do this for all the images. I wouldn't like to crop in on a 400 4.5 lens image and try and substitute for an 800 millimeters or a 600 millimeters. I think that shouldn't be done, and you're not going to get the best output by doing that. I think this lens is a beautiful environmental portrait lens for wildlife and birding. As you can see in these images, these shots show the subject within a space within their natural territory, and you get, I think, more impactful images than just very close-up headshots that you will get out of a 800 millimeters lens, for example. So therefore, if you plan your shot well, if you manage the distance to your subject well, if you ensure that all of these things are taken care of, you're going to get very beautiful environmental portrait shots of birds and wildlife with the 400 4.8. And I think the limitation of not going further than 400 millimeters is actually beneficial from a photography compositional point of view. Now let's talk about bokeh a little bit. I think the bokeh out of this lens is really, really good. They can look nervous in some situations, and they can look really creamy and smooth in some situations. And you can see a combination of both in these images, and I like both of them. I like that painterly, slightly nervous bokeh that Nikon lenses produce. Now I try to see if there is any chromatic aberration in natural scenarios. I couldn't find any. Wide open at f4.5. Of course, there was nothing that I could actually notice at f5.6, and these are not very scientific tests, but you know what, in real world images I didn't see any chromatic aberration. Shooting directly against the sun or any bright source of light, let me tell you, it was surprising to see how clean the images are. There was absolutely no weird flaring or glaring or ghosting happening with this lens. Absolutely clean and impeccable kind of image quality.
So I think the 400 should be understood as a 400 millimeters lens. Don't try and get 800 millimeters worth of cropping out of these files. I think that should not be the expectation, because you are sacrificing a bit of focal length. But then you need a 400 for most situations. As in, you can shoot wildlife, you can shoot sports, you can shoot portraits as well. So I think this is a great travel lens as well. This is also a very good landscape lens. If you actually need a 600 millimeters, don't look at this 400 and then try and crop those images and then see whether it performs well or not. If you need 800 millimeters, same, don't do it. For me, this is an all-rounder telephoto lens, and for what it is, this is absolutely worth the money. And I'm not planning to buy this lens, but I think probably next year, when I plan to actually invest in some long telephoto lenses, this and the 600 are the two lenses that I'm going to go for.